In this chapter, we're going to talk about e-business. This is the final chapter of the class. First of all, an overview of the chapter. So first we're going to start by introducing e-business. We're going to discuss types of e-business, successes and failures, and adoption factors. This will be followed by briefly studying the economical impact of e-business models. Then we will discuss the impact on the value chain. That will be particularly important in a B2B perspective, business to business. We're also going to extensively discuss various business models on the web and give plenty of examples. Then we're going to zoom into B2B technologies and corresponding business models. We're going to finish the chapter by saying a few words about online advertising and web analytics. First of all, let's start with some basic definitions. And we're going to start defining e-commerce and e-business. Electronic commerce or e-commerce is the process of buying and selling goods electronically. And that could be with any electronic means, not just the internet. Obviously, these days it will be particularly the internet, but it could also be by means of leased telecommunication lines, for example, whereby companies are going to set up point-to-point connections between them. There are two sides to consider when you discuss electronic commerce. First of all, there's the buying side, where a company is going to buy from its suppliers. And on the other hand, there's the selling side, whereby a company is going to sell to its consumers. Both sides can be efficiently automated using state-of-the-art ICT technologies. And in this chapter, we will extensively comment on that. Electronic business, or e-business, is a lot more broader in definition. That means it's e-commerce plus the use of the internet and other digital technologies, which we will extensively comment on, for performing internal business processes and coordinating with suppliers and partners. Right? So you can see that electronic business or e-business is a lot more general in terms of definition than electronic commerce, which is more narrow. There are different types of electronic commerce or e-business if you want. First of all, we can categorize e-business in terms of the nature of the participants. Right? Business to consumer is the type of e-business whereby retailing products and services are directly sold to individual shoppers. Think about Dell, for example. Dell is selling laptops, and you can have a B2C context there where Dell is directly selling its laptops to its end users, to the consumers. Business to business, or B2B, is the sales of goods and services amongst businesses. Think about a supermarket like Walmart in the United States setting up a B2B agreement with one of its suppliers. Think about Gillette or Procter & Gamble and so on. So that's B2B. Consumer to consumer, these are consumers selling directly to consumers. Think about what eBay is doing, right? So if you have a nice bottle of wine and you're not a wine fan, but you want to sell it, you can put it on eBay and sell it to another consumer. In Belgium, we also have Kapazza, for example, as a C2C site. So this is one way of categorizing electronic commerce or e-business, but we can also categorize it in terms of the participants' connection, the touch point, let's say. So that could be through a PC, although this is no longer very commonly. It could also be by means of a PDA or by means of a smartphone, for example. Right? And then we talk about mobile commerce. Somebody uses his or her smartphone to do certain kinds of transactions, right? To just do banking, for example, or just buy some items. Closely related to that is the idea of location-based commerce, or L-commerce. This is just M-commerce, so mobile commerce, whereby transactions will be targeted to individuals in specific locations at specific times. So imagine you walking with your smartphone in one of the main shopping streets of Leuven, let's say the Disintermediation, for example, and depending upon your location in the Disintermediation, you're going to have targeted advertisements appearing on your smartphone. This is location-based commerce. Some people also use interactive digital TV to do e-commerce or e-business, although I wouldn't say that's very common. But in that particular case, we're going to talk about T-commerce, right? Television commerce. E-learning. E-learning is the use of ICT in learning teaching. And this is a domain which is currently very hot. You know? Think about what you guys are doing on Toledo, for example. Toledo has lots of facilities to do e-learning. Many lecturers use Toledo only for distributing their course material, but you can also use Toledo for doing online testing, for example. But not only think about Toledo, also think about the concept of MOOCs, massive open online courses. These are courses which are being offered on the internet by companies like Coursera, for example, and where people can register. They have access to all the course materials, they can view the slides, they can see some online lectures, there's some frequently asked questions involved, there's some Q&A sessions, etc. So e-learning is an area which is becoming very popular in e-business. Also, the government is heavily investing in e-technologies, and then we have e-government, which is the use of ICT in government and public services to improve the efficiency and provision of information and services. Think about government to citizen. Think about in Belgium, for example, tax on web, whereby a citizen can directly state their taxes and their income on the internet. G2B is government to business, or Belgian government has various facilities for tax, for social security administration, which are targeted to businesses. And then we have government to government, in case governments want to directly exchange information with one another, we have G2G. And the list goes on, right? We have e-health, e-culture, and so on. So e-business is really hot these days. Now, how, before the internet became popular, how did people do commerce, right? So the way people are making a purchase decision or actually making a purchase was usually as follows. So you have a buyer that is in need of a certain product or service. So he or she is going to try and find a seller. Once the seller has found, then the goods will be selected. The goods will be configured. There will be maybe some negotiation. There will be a sale. There will be a payment, a delivery of the goods or services, and maybe some post-sale activity also in case the goods were damaged or in case the invoice was not correct, etc. Now, how is the internet going to change this? Well, the internet is going to change this significantly. Let's work out an example, right? Let's say you want to book a trip to Barcelona. Together with your friends, you want to go to Barcelona, you want to have some fun in Barcelona. Okay. How is this going to take place in an internet environment? Well, first of all, you're going to make use of a search engine. Right? Probably you're going to make use of Google or maybe Yahoo. You're going to try and enter a search text like trip to Barcelona. That will typically provide you with lots of answers, right? Lots of websites offering you to actually configure your trip to Barcelona. Usually, you will be transferred to a traveling site which will provide you with an online catalog, a catalog where you actually can choose between different options for your trip to Barcelona. Right? So you can configure the flight, you can actually also configure the hotel, and you can also book some add-on services, like maybe you want a rental car, etc. So an online catalog is going to provide you with a catalog of services that the travel service can provide in order to accommodate your travel, right? A recommender agent can then actually come up with some recommendations and say, hey, you're booking a trip to Barcelona, you want a flight, you want a hotel, maybe we can recommend a rental car for you, right? And maybe we can bundle that together into one package and give you a pretty good deal. A configurator will then allow you to configure your trip to Barcelona. It will tell you what options there are for flights, so you will be able to configure your flight. You will also be able to configure your hotel stay, etc. So that's what a configurator will do. A shopping bot is going to look at the best deal. So maybe you already know your departure date and your return date for your flight, but you do not know what company you want to fly with, right? And there are many companies offering a flight to Barcelona, let's say. You can even go by train if you would wish. A shopping bot is going to actually look for the best deal. So you can say, this is my departure date, this is my return date. A shopping bot is a piece of software which is going to shop for you and is going to look at different airlines and see what airline can give you the best deal in order to schedule your trip. An aggregator is also a very nice piece of information, because it's also a very nice piece of functionality, because that will allow you to aggregate product or service requests in order to get a better deal. Think about you planning a trip to Barcelona, but maybe at the same instance, there's somebody else somewhere in the world wanting to plan a trip to Barcelona. By actually grouping both of these trips, you may end up having a better deal. Either a better deal for your flights, either a better deal for your hotel stay, or maybe even either a better deal for your taxi service, right? So an aggregator allows you to aggregate all these requests in order to have a better deal. An automated agent is a piece of software which will negotiate on your behalf, depending upon what you think is important. Do you think price is important? Do you think service quality is important, etc.? All of that can be taken into account by automated agents in order to find the best product or service for you. A transaction processor will then allow you to process the transaction. Maybe you want to purchase the flight, maybe you want to purchase the hotel stay, maybe you want to purchase the product bundle. All of that can be processed by means of a transaction processor. Maybe there's some data interchange that needs to take place, especially if you're going to buy the product or service with a credit card. There's some data interchange, and also cryptography is needed in order to make sure that your credit card credentials are considered with the appropriate safety. E-payment systems will then allow you to make the online payment. A tracking agent will allow you to track the delivery of the product or service. Imagine that you also booked some tickets for a soccer game in Barcelona to Camp Nou, and you would like to have the tickets physically delivered. Then a tracking agent can actually keep you up to date about when you may expect the tickets to be delivered to your home address. Online help are then all kinds of facilities that a company is going to offer to help you in case there's some issues with the flight, in case there's some issues with the hotel stay or with the taxi service, etc. Browser sharing is something which is really very typical in case electronic services are delivered. Browser sharing means that the seller is going to have access to the browser of the buyer who bought some electronic services or maybe a piece of software and who is facing some issues in order to get the software to work. Well, then with browser sharing, the seller can actually have access to the browser of the buyer and see how he or she can remedy the problem. Internet telephony like Skype can also be used to in case there are any problems that you wish to discuss. If you look at the right side of this picture, you see that there's a whole lot of information being gathered. Information on the search behavior. How are people going to use Google? On the browsing behavior. How are people going to use a particular website? On the customer preferences. What kind of flights do customers prefer? What kind of hotels do they prefer? On the effectiveness of promotions. On price sensitivities. The market basket. The market basket is the items which are being purchased together by the customer. So all that information is being gathered. So all that information could also be analyzed. And in one of the sections of this chapter, more specifically, in the section on web analytics, we're going to discuss how you can analyze all this information and use it to your benefit, to optimize your business processes, to optimize your marketing campaigns, maybe even to optimize the design of your website. So there's a tremendous amount of information being gathered here. So you can see that the internet has substantially changed the way people are going to buy goods and services electronically compared to the old way of doing it. And when I say the old way of doing it, I mean the non-internet way. Okay, electronic delivery is only possible for particular services. So particular services or particular products. More specifically, services can typically be 100% delivered electronically, which gives a considerable cost reduction potential. And that's why the online service industry is growing rapidly. Think about electronic banking, think about online securities trading, online job markets, travel services. These are all services that can be perfectly delivered electronically. For products, it becomes a lot harder, right? We cannot deliver a laptop electronically. A laptop needs to be delivered physically. A book, however, can be delivered electronically, right? Sometimes customers are interested in a soft copy of the book, so then we can send a soft copy of the book as a PDF or any kind of other format by email to the customer. But there's only a few digitized products like MP3s, ebooks, and so on, but computers or laptops are not digitized, so those need to still be delivered physically to the end consumer. So for those products that need to be physically delivered, finding a cost-effective way of delivering them to the home address of the customers becomes a key issue. And that's why in an e-business environment, companies have to pay special attention to order fulfillment and logistics. Order fulfillment are all the activities needed to provide customers with ordered goods and services, also including related customer services, right? Post-sale activity, for example. And logistics is then the operations involved in the efficient and effective flow and storage of goods, services, and related information from point of origin to point of consumption. How can I get my laptops to the end consumer, for example? Okay. And there's a big difference there when you compare traditional versus e-logistics. In the traditional world, that means before the internet became popular, you usually had large amounts of material. Think about clothes, think about computers, think about toys, for example, that were being sent to a few destinations. And then people went to those destinations. Those were typically retailers or distribution stores or supermarkets. So people went to those distribution stores, supermarket, retailers, and bought the products there. Now, in an internet environment, this has totally changed, right? In e-logistics, we have typically small parcels which are sent to many homes. Like, instead of sending a computer or a laptop to a distribution store, basically what we're doing right now is we're sending it directly to the home of the end consumer. So from a logistics viewpoint, this creates a tremendous amount of challenges. Challenges because we will also need reverse logistics. What is that reverse logistics? Well, reverse logistics means that if you send a product to the home of a customer and it turns out to be the wrong product, then you need to be able to send it back or receive it back as a seller, right? So there need to be facilities for returning products back to the seller in case it's the wrong product or in case the product contains an error or a fault. Reverse logistics. So those facilities need also be established in order to do order fulfillment. And that's why in the e-business environment, you see a lot of third-party logistics suppliers that are becoming very popular these days. I'm thinking about companies like Federal Express, DHL, and so on. Those are companies that actually provide services to do logistics in an e-business environment. Here you can see e-business or e-commerce being categorized according to various dimensions. So first of all, we have the virtual product dimension. We can have a digital product, like an MP3, a book, or for example, a flight that you're scheduling. Or we can have a physical product. A physical product is a product you need in the physical world, right? It could be a laptop as a physical product, a piece of clothing, and so on. We can have a physical agent. That means a company which is available in the physical world, right, where you can go and do physical shopping if you want. Or we can have a digital agent. A digital agent is a company which is only available on the internet. Think about Amazon, for example. Amazon is a digital agent. Then we can have a physical process. That means that we need a physical process of delivering the goods physically, or we can have a digital process. That means that the process is only electronically available, such that the goods can be delivered electronically. And there are various types of combinations between those three different types of dimensions. Pure electronic commerce means that you typically have a digital product, a digital process, and a digital agent, such that everything can be done on a computer on the internet. Different types of companies are now popular in the new economy. We can have bricks and mortar companies, old economy companies if you want. These are traditional companies based in the physical world only. They are built out of bricks and mortar, as the name suggests. A pure play or a virtual organization is a company that is engaged only in electronic commerce. So it does not have any presence in the physical world. It is only engaged in electronic commerce. Examples hereof are Amazon. Amazon is a company that is only available in the physical world. Facebook, right? Facebook, there's no shop somewhere in the street which is a Facebook shop. It's only available on the internet. Or Dell, for example. Those are pure play or virtual companies, only available in the physical world. Clicks and mortar companies are the combination of both. These are organizations that conduct some e-business activities, yet their primary business is done in the physical world. While you can think of supermarkets, for example. For supermarkets, many supermarkets offer e-shopping facilities. That means that you can log on to their website, you can configure the market basket that you want, the market basket of items that you want, and then you can go and get it. So they do have some e-business activities, but their primary business is done in the physical world, since you still have to go to the supermarket in order to get the items that you purchased. What are the potential advantages of B2C e-commerce? Well, I'm sure I don't have to convince you about that. Well, we don't need a physical shop front anymore. The only thing we need is a website. We just need a website where we can advertise our products and services and where we can directly sell them. Reduced transaction costs, especially when we have electronic delivery and electronic services, for example. Then we definitely have reduced transaction costs and increased transaction speed. Ease of crossing geographical boundaries. This is, our website is just available 24/7, so that means the website is always available, and it's available to the whole world. Ease of updating existing and distributing new information. If there's new books that you want to sell on Amazon, well, it's really easy. You just include the book information into the Amazon database, and it gets automatically published on the Amazon website. And it's very easy to distribute that new information to our end consumers. I can also provide additional value for customers, right? I can actually provide targeted advertising tailored towards the needs of my customers. Think about Amazon again, for example. As soon as you log on to Amazon, based on your previous purchases and based upon your interests, Amazon is going to personalize the whole website for you, and it's going to give you targeted recommendations based upon your purchases and your interests. Internet is universal, it's easy to use, lots of standards there, so this is also a very important advantage of B2C e-commerce. And also smaller companies can easily invest in e-business activities. So you can see there's a lot of advantages for B2C e-commerce, but it wasn't always that successful. Success is sometimes far from guaranteed. If you look at the .com bubble burst, for example, the .com bubble burst was something that happened in the early 2000 years, right? So somewhere from 2000 to 2001. Because then we had all those companies jumping on the e-business bandwagon, and we called them .com companies, but not all of them were successful. Because in the early days of e-business, people were still very reluctant to use it. So a typical .com company relied on network economies to build up market share. Amazon, when the Amazon website was started, not many people were using it because not many people knew what Amazon was actually doing. Many people also did not trust Amazon. But as soon as they start having a critical customer base, and it started to be used more and more, and those customers were actually spreading word of mouth saying, hey, Amazon, this is a nice website, and it's really handy to order a book online and get it brought to you, to your home address. Well, as soon as those network economies, those network effects started to become important, then Amazon started to gain money. So you need those network effects. You need to actually make sure that enough people start to know you such that they can spread word of mouth, positive word of mouth, then more and more people will start using the service or product on your website, and you will start making money. But typically at the start, you need to actually build up that mind share, as we call it. You need to actually make sure that people start to know you. And that's not easy, right? And it did not always work. For Amazon it worked, but actually Amazon in its early years was actually having lots of losses, right? Because sometimes they were giving product or service away for free just to build up that critical mind share. And for many companies, it actually did not go that way. Think about, this is an example of pets. This was a company, pets.com, that wanted to sell pet supplies online, but you know, the business model was completely wrong. Nobody is going to actually sell pet supplies online, especially when you need them right away. And this is just one example. There exist plenty of examples like that, creating a .com bubble burst. That means that there was a fast increase in stock prices of these online companies until some of them went bust, went bankrupt, and then of course there was a stock market bubble that occurs. Many investors thought that those companies were going to be the future, that they were going to be profit-making, so they were anticipating huge profits there, which actually did not take place, and that gave us a stock market bubble, right? Okay, so it was not always that successful. Amazon, you know, at the end of 2002, 40% of surviving .coms and 70% of online retailers in the US were reporting profits. Amazon started making profits in the fourth quarter of 2001, right? So they incurred quite a bit of losses before they started earning some profits. Below you, in the below graph, you can see some estimated quarterly US retail e-commerce sales as a percentage of total quarterly retail sales. And you can see that it's steadily increasing, right? We're going to come back to that later on as we proceed further through the chapter, okay? Note that this is just B2C, and B2C is just one part of the story. There's also B2B, and B2B is a much larger share of the overall revenue. The dollar value of B2B comprises at least 85% of the total transaction value of e-commerce. So B2B is a lot bigger and a lot more important than just B2C, as you see right here. And note, and this is something we're going to come back to later on, that B2C or B2B is not necessarily using the internet and the World Wide Web technology, right? In B2B, other technologies like EDI, electronic data interchange, are also very popular, but that's something we're going to come back to later on. Now, how is B2B different from B2C? Well, there's a more complex process that may involve extensive negotiations over prices, product specifications, and so on. Let's give an example. Let's say you're Ford, you're a car manufacturer, Ford, situated in Detroit, and you have a GPS supplier. Then of course you need to extensively negotiate with the GPS supplier about the product specifications, just about the measurements of the GPS and about the functionality that it should provide. So that will typically involve the exchange of CAD/CAM designs, computer-aided design, computer-aided manufacturing, such that you know the specifications of the car, you know the specifications of the GPS, and such that Ford can be certain that if it gets the GPSs, it can be easily integrated into their car designs. So that is a more complex process than just buying a laptop on the Dell website, for example. So here, this will involve extensive negotiations over the product specifications and then also over the prices, because Ford will need to make a guess or an estimate of how many GPSs it may need. And based upon that, it can start negotiating over prices, over delivery terms, etc. So those B2B relationships are often longer term, and they involve a higher stickiness. Stickiness means that the supplier and the buyer engage into a long-term partnership, right? In B2C, you do not have a high stickiness. If I buy a book on Amazon and for some reason I'm dissatisfied because the book has been damaged or the book is too expensive, I can go and purchase the book elsewhere as I want. Well, in a B2B setting, you have higher stickiness. So stickiness means that the supplier and the buyer will actually engage into a long-term partnership or relationship. So that will also allow us to focus on realizing process cost efficiencies, right? We have to make sure that we have an agile and efficient supply chain in a B2B setting such that we can leverage cost efficiencies. Collaborative commerce means that in a B2B setting, typically you're going to have multiple partners involved, right? And we can set up very efficient collaborations there, supported by adequate ICT technologies, to make sure that the whole process is as efficient as possible. You can see some key areas of a business. So a company typically has two sides. So it has the end consumer side and has the supplier side. And companies can work according to a build-to-order or a ship-to-order philosophy. Build-to-order means you wait for the order, like a computer. You wait until it has been configured, and then you're going to build it and ship it to the end consumer. A ship-to-order philosophy is what Amazon does. So you order it, and then Amazon will ship it to your home address. And every company has typically a B2C side, that's business to consumer, which will typically be automated using CRM, customer relationship management. But a company also has a B2B side, which will then be optimized using SCM, stands for supply chain management. A company that is available online needs to make sure that all its business processes are both internally integrated as well as externally integrated. So internal integration is going to look at the ERP, Enterprise Resource Planning functionality, and EAI stands for Enterprise Application Integration. Everything needs to be fully integrated because integration is going to give you efficiency. External integration means that the firm should talk to the outside world, right? To its consumers and to its suppliers. And ideally, it should talk to this outside world using the optimal ICT technologies. And in what follows, we're going to give plenty of examples about this. Okay, ideas that you also often see popping up here are the idea of a front and a back office. The back office are the operations, the activities that support fulfillment of sales, such as accounting and logistics. The front office is basically everything what the end consumer sees. These are sales and advertising information, so anything that is visible to the consumers. And of course, both should be fully integrated. Back office and front office should be fully integrated. And some examples of integration are when a customer browses a product online. In other words, when a customer sees the online front-end system, then the product description, inventory count, order information should be retrieved from the back-end systems, and they should always be up to date. Imagine that Amazon has a new book, for example, right? So they want to sell a new book. So what they're going to do is they're going to store the book information in their back-end relational databases, right? As soon as they store them in their back-end relational databases, the book should also be available on the front end. It should be available on the Amazon website. So there should be a very close integration between the Amazon back-end databases and the front end, which is the website, which is visible to end consumers. So that means that all the software systems should be smoothly integrated, like enterprise resource planning, customer relationship management, supply chain management, and so on. All of that should be fully aligned, fully integrated. And we can establish this integration by means of enterprise application integration software. Okay, it has not always been a successful e-business adoption, right? We already discussed that when we discussed the dot-com bubble burst, for example. And there's been some technological and non-technological limitations. I'm not going to go through all of them exhaustively, but here you can see telecommunications bandwidth can sometimes be insufficient. Software development tools are still evolving. Sometimes it's difficult to establish the integration. Internet accessibility is still expensive and or inconvenient, especially when you're talking about the developing countries like Africa and so on. Non-technological limitations are security and privacy. Sometimes you have people that still do not trust the internet very well. National and international government regulations can get in the way. Some customers like to feel and touch products like clothes, for example. Nobody's gonna buy or purchase clothes electronically. You want to fit them, you want to see how well they suit you, how good they like, how good they look, etc. Okay? Also online fraud. There's lots of potential for online fraud, which is also something we're going to come back to later on in the chapter. Societal barriers, the digital divide. Well, there's still a lot of socioeconomic differences between communities in their access to computers and the internet. Still, you have sometimes people that lack ICT skills and literacy, what we call refuseniks, people that refuse to use ICT technologies, the internet, e-business, and so on. Although I have to say that I believe those are a very big minority, or a very small minority, right? Not a lot of people, that's what I want to say. Global digital divide is then amongst world regions. As I just said before, in developing countries, the access to the internet is still quite difficult. Okay, let's have a look at the economic impact of B2C business models. So let's look at the internet and market economics. Let's look at the impact on the value chain. We're going to look at the internet and Porter's competitive forces, and then we're going to discuss some examples of business models on the web. Well, the internet is changing the economics of information by shrinking information asymmetry. It's easier for customers to obtain and compare pricing and other information. Think about the example I gave at the start of the chapter when you want to book a trip to Barcelona, let's say. If you want to compare different flights, that's fine. You can do it on the internet. It's very easy. You just go to the website of the airline company, you type in departure and return date, and you can start comparing. Even if you want to compare it with other ways of doing your journey, like using a train, for example, it is very easy to compare it. So it's really easy to compare information provided by different online companies. You just go to their website and you can compare the information. For the company itself, the internet extends both the richness and the reach of the information. It's a cheaper way of reaching a wide audience than traditional advertising. A company, online company, can now customize its website to its audience, right? So it can do targeted advertising and so on. And there's lots of opportunities for mass personalization. That means the website can be personalized towards the needs of the individual customers and so on. Think about the example I gave when logging on to Amazon. As soon as you log on to Amazon, the website will be customized, will be individualized to your personal needs. It will be personalized, right? So everybody, if each of us will be logging on to Amazon, we'll get our own website. Same with Facebook, right? If you log on to Facebook, depending upon your previous Facebook activity, depending upon the posts you put on there, the Facebook page will be different for each one of us. So we can reach new levels of richness and we can reach more people. The internet has also reduced transaction costs. So to find buyers, we do not have to do a mass mailing of expensive brochures or invest into expensive TV and radio ads. We can just customize our website, we can do mass personalization, etc. On the internet, it also becomes possible to do fully automated collection of payments. We can have online payment systems that allow us to collect the payments automatically in a very efficient way. In some cases, delivering the product can also be done very efficiently, especially when electronic delivery is possible. Also, all kinds of support facilities which are being offered on the internet, like email, right? Somebody can send an email to a firm, ask for a particular question about the products or service being offered by the firm. There's a frequently asked questions site, typically. There's user forums. Think about the Apple user community. As soon as you start having a problem with the new iPad or your new iPhone, you just go to the Apple community, you just see whether other people reported similar problems, and you see how it got solved, right? So the internet can reduce transaction costs. If you look at a traditional economic cost structure, you will see that it typically looks like the following. So we have the marginal revenue, which is the price, which is constant, right? So constant price. We have the average total cost, which has a U shape, and then we have the marginal cost curve, which keeps on going up. Now, from traditional economics, we know that the optimal number of units to be produced or sold is where the marginal cost equals the marginal revenue, right? This is the traditional economic cost structure. How is the internet going to change this? Well, the internet is going to change this in terms of your marginal cost. Your marginal cost will be almost constant, right? Whether you're selling 100 MP3 files or 1,000 MP3 files, it's not going to cost you a lot more. It's not like you need to invest into an extra building. No. maybe you need to invest in an extra server, but that's not a big investment to be made. So your marginal cost will be very flat because the cost needed to deliver an extra product or service electronically, assuming that they can be delivered electronically, is low and constant. So you have nearly unlimited economies of scale, right? So the internet is definitely changing the way those costs are going to look like. So we have nearly unlimited economies of scale because we have new or few capacity constraints. In the old days, before the internet, we had to invest in buildings, manufacturing buildings, and so on. In an internet environment, the only thing we have to do is invest in hardware service, and that does not cost a lot of money when you compare it to building an extra building, to investing in an extra building. There are high fixed costs though, right? Typically there are high fixed costs to set up the whole internet infrastructure, to set up your whole e-business infrastructure, but those fixed costs are incurred early and they are typically not recoverable. The marginal costs are typically approaching zero. Remember the example I gave, whether you're selling 100 MP3 music files or 1 million MP3 music files, the marginal costs of that are going to be approaching zero. Now, given this cost structure, firms need to react to that, and they need to actually come up with new ways of competing on the internet. And some ways of competing on the internet are versioning, confounding, and creating network effects. Versioning means that companies are going to come up with different versions of their online services, whatever the online service is. Maybe it's just a piece of software that you want to purchase online. But if you're buying a piece of software online, companies are going to regularly come out with new versions of the software so as to gain money. Software updates, for example. So versioning is one way of creating competitive advantage in an e-business environment. Is simply by creating new versions of the service, new versions of the software. Confounding means that we're going to make it difficult for buyers to compare. Companies know that it's very easy for their customers to compare on the internet, right? So the customers can go on the internet and compare the product or service with different suppliers. So what they're going to do is they're going to come up with confounding. They're going to make it less straightforward to compare by offering extra options. So a company is going to offer an extra option that the competitor is not offering, such that it's really hard to start comparing the offers of both companies because, the offers are never identically the same. Creating network effects is also very important. Trying to establish that positive word of mouth, creating network effects. For example, by investing in social ads. A company can invest in social ads on Facebook, right? And it can start targeting its product or services to the friends of their customers using Facebook information, using the fact that somebody liked your product or service on Facebook, for example. So creating network effects is also a very important competitive strategy that is often adopted in an internet environment. Preemptive pricing is something we're not going to discuss, so you can leave that out. So you see, because of the fact that the internet has changed the way we do business, companies also have to carefully think about new ways of creating competitive advantage. And those are versioning, confounding, and creating network effects. Now, how is the internet going to impact the value chain? Well, the internet has a huge impact on the value chain, since the internet offers a new distribution channel. The internet basically has led to the unbundling of information from traditional value chain channels, right? And here we see concepts like disintermediation and reintermediation popping up. And I'm going to show you this with an example right here. Let's take a company. Let's take an example of a company. Levi Strauss is one example of a company. So Levi Strauss is a cloth manufacturer. So it makes pants, it makes shirts, skirts, whatever. In the old days of Levi Strauss, and when I say the old days, I mean before the internet became popular, what happened was that you had Levi Strauss as a manufacturer. See the top of my slide. So Levi Strauss was the manufacturer. It sent the clothes to the distributor. The distributor then sent it to the retailer, right? And and the retailers sold it to the end consumers. Those retailers could be shops like H&M here or Eno in Leuven. So that's how it went, from manufacturer to distributor to retailer to customer. Now, because of the emergence of the internet, all of a sudden, Levi Strauss got direct access to its end consumers. It got direct access. The internet channel gave it a direct access means. So Levi Strauss could actually set up a website, have direct access to its end consumers, and it could start directly selling its products to its end consumers, hereby alienating the distributors and retailers. So actually the distributors and retailers were no longer part of the game. This is what we call disintermediation, the removal of those intermediary steps in a value chain by directly selling to those end consumers using the internet. That resulted in lower purchase transaction costs because, you know, the distributor and the retailer were no longer part of the game, and of course that could then be reflected in potential price advantages. Now, being a distributor or a retailer, obviously, this is not something you will like, because basically you're no longer part of the game. So as this happened with Levi Strauss, the distributors and retailers started filing lawsuits against Levi Strauss. They started saying to Levi Strauss, hey, you're competing with us, whereas we are also distributing your products, so why are you competing with us? So that's a channel conflict. It's a conflict in that channel between Levi Strauss on the one hand and the distributors and retailers on the other hand. And in the early days of e-business, a lot of lawsuits will file like that, right? So Levi Strauss was one popular case, Fisher-Price was another popular case. And many of these suppliers had to change their business model and had to stop selling goods electronically directly to their end consumers because their distributors and retailers were not happy with that. So what many of those online retailers or online manufacturers did was, instead of directly selling to the consumers, they came up with a website which allowed consumers to configure their product or services, and then once the product or service was configured, they gave a link to the closest retailer where the customer could go and buy the product, right? So they were no longer selling products directly online, but just gave links to the customer to the nearest retailer store where he could go and buy the product. So that's the whole idea of a channel conflict, right? A channel conflict is, in other words, a tension among different distribution chains for the same product or service. That is something that is going to occur when a channel member perceives another channel to be engaged in behavior that prevents or impedes it from achieving its own goals. The web gives you a direct sales channel, so there we have the risk of alienating traditional sales reps, creating internal conflicts, and the threats may include lockouts or even lawsuits by the distributors, which is the example I gave you, right? A lockout means that the manufacturer or retailer is going to threat by not selling the product or service anymore, even sometimes by a lawsuit. Disintermediation is something that is usually not instantaneous. It typically takes place step by step. One is going to start by selling a few products or services electronically and is going to increase that step by step. So the idea here is how to actually make sure that we can placate the partners in the distribution channel while taking steps towards the eventual demise of these relationships. But that depends upon the balance of power. How much are we relying on our manufacturers or retailers to distribute our products? The ultimate idea is, of course, channel cooperation. Try to cooperate with your partners downstream in the channel. Try to find ways of collaborating with your manufacturers and your retailers. For example, by allowing your customers to configure the product or service on your website and giving links to nearby retail stores. A famous example here is the case of Benjamin Moore Paints. That's another well-known example of a channel conflict. Benjamin Moore was a large paint producer in the United States, and it worked together with a lot of do-it-yourself businesses. which basically refrained from the early adoption of e-commerce. Why? Because of the low buying frequency, relatively high price, and high density of the selling points. Because of the emergence of e-business, the website of Benjamin Moore was getting very popular, and they could get direct access to their end consumers. And they started direct selling through the internet in 2010. Retailers of Benjamin Moore, so distributing the paint of Benjamin Moore, were not informed of this. So the CAO was actually required to rectify the move with a YouTube movie, as you see below, right? In that YouTube movie, he actually states that they will no longer engage into directly selling their paints to online, to end consumers, but they will actually help end consumers to choose the right paint, the paint they want, and then give them links to the nearest stores where they can go and purchase these paints. Okay. Reintermediation means that there's a new focus and there's a new type of intermediary function in a value chain. That means that delivery becomes a critical part of the overall customer satisfaction. And as we said earlier, with the emergence of e-business, you typically have small parcels that are being sent to many homes. So we have reintermediation. We have new types of channel members that are going to get very important. New types of intermediaries. And here I'm talking about information brokers. I'm talking about also delivery services like the Royal Mail, DHL, UPS, and so on. I'm also talking about intelligent agents. Intelligent agents are like the shopping bots we referred to earlier. A shopping bot is a very intelligent piece of software that is going to shop on your behalf. Or it could also be an aggregator. An aggregator is a piece of software which is going to aggregate different product or service requests in order to get a better deal. Now, how is the internet and e-business going to change the way value is created within a particular industry branch? Well, the way economic value is created within a particular industry branch is as follows. It depends upon the internal rivalry between existing competitors. It depends upon the threat of new entrants. It depends upon the bargaining power of the customers. It depends upon the threats of substitute products or services. And it depends upon to what extent suppliers can exert bargaining power. So those are 5 major forces that are going to determine how economic value is created or distributed within a particular industry branch. Well, how is the internet going to have an impact on each of those 5 forces? Well, in terms of threats of substitute products or services, the proliferation of the internet is going to create new substitution threats. It's really very important. It's really very easy to come up with new products or services on the internet. For buyers, I'm not going to go through all of them. For buyers, it's really easy to switch. If you're in the internet and you're purchasing a product from Amazon and for some reason you are not happy with the product or service anymore, you can very easily switch from one side to another. Rivalry amongst existing competitors, well, the internet allows you to widen the geographic market, allows you to increase the number of competitors. In terms of bargaining power of suppliers, think about the channel conflict and the channel tension that we just mentioned. Thanks to the internet, a supplier now has direct access to its end consumers, right? And it gives it some extra power to the suppliers. In terms of barriers to entry, well, the internet is, low barriers to entry, right? It's very easy to enter the market. You just set up a website and you're there. So the internet has changed relations with suppliers and other business partners. There's increased opportunities for integration. There are lower entry barriers. There are lower setup costs. And there's increased flexibility in terms of choosing partners. There's lower switching costs. There will also be B2B e-marketplaces, as we'll discuss later on, that provide you access to many partners in your B2B setting. Okay, so let's focus on some of the business models that can now be adopted on the internet. A business model is a way of gaining money, is a way of creating added value from an economic perspective. So it's a way of doing business by which a company can sustain itself or make money, in other words. Example of a simple business model, producing a good or service and selling it directly to consumers. If the sale revenues exceed the costs, then the company is going to realize a profit. A more complex business model is media broadcasting, where you have a broadcaster which is part of a network of distributors, content creators, advertisers, and listeners, viewers. Think about Yahoo portal site, for example. Yahoo portal site, lots of parties are going to actually log on to the Yahoo portal. You can have content creators, you can have advertisers, you can have viewers, and so on. So in that setting, it is not always that straightforward to see who's going to make money, how much, and how much should be charged for particular products or services offered on the Yahoo portal website. So the internet has clearly changed the way people can do business by allowing more complex business models. Here you can see some common revenue models without trying to be exhaustive. We can have a direct sales model to the left, whereby you directly sell computer to an end user. We can have a transaction fees model, whereby commissions are paid on volumes of transactions. Think about eBay, for example. We can have a subscription model, whereby fixed amounts are charged, usually monthly, for subscribing to a particular product or service. We can have an advertisement model, whereby a company is going to put an advertisement on its website, a banner, and generate income like that. We can also have affiliate models, and affiliate models means that you have two companies that are working online and are sending customers back and forth and generate some mutual benefits there. So you can see you have lots of different types of revenue models. So thanks to the internet, we have all kinds of new business models like iTunes, Apple product, Google, right? If you think about how Google earns money, well, Google has a whole range of products it offers, like, you know, Google Advertisement, Google AdWords, Google AdSense, Google Glasses. These are all ways of gaining money on the internet, adopted by Google. Or it could also be by reinventing tried and true models, like eBay, for example. It's just a classical auction, except that when we're going to do auctions on the internet, the way we're going to do auctions will be different. So you can see a classification of business models. We can have brokerage models. Brokerage, or brokers on the internet, or market makers. These are pieces of software that facilitate a particular transaction to take place. It could be an e-marketplace, an online market where buyers and sellers are going to meet each other. It could be an auction broker facilitating an auction, a transaction broker facilitating a particular transaction, maybe even a payment. An advertising model could be a portal, right? Yahoo is a portal, so you can do advertising on Yahoo. Could be search-based advertising. Google has lots of facilities to do search-based advertising, and we're going to see some examples of that later on. You can have a merchant model, a manufacturer model, affiliate model, a community model, so lots of different models, and in what follows, we're going to briefly discuss this. Brokers, as I said, are market makers. They bring buyers and sellers together and they facilitate transactions, and they can facilitate any aspect of the transaction. Right? And usually, the broker is going to charge a fee or commission for each transaction it enables. And those brokers are very commonly adopted in B2B, B2C, and C2C. And they can take on many forms. It could be a B2B e-marketplace where buyers and sellers are going to meet and where you have all kinds of extra facilities provided. Could be an auction broker, eBay. Could be a transaction broker facilitating aspects of a particular transaction, like eBay, like PayPal, for example. Or it could be brokers that allow you to do particular kind of things like booking a travel and so on. Examples of that are Expedia and Travelocity. Auction brokers, well, a very well-known example of an auction broker is eBay. Well, I guess all of you know eBay. So it's a market mechanism by which sellers place offers and buyers are going to make sequential bids. Then the auction broker is then going to charge a seller a listing fee and a commission scaled with the value of the transaction. Basically, you have two different types of auctions, right? You have forward and reverse auctions, right? Let me just first explain a forward auction. A forward auction is typically what eBay is going to do. Imagine that I have a bottle of wine right here, and I'm not a wine lover, but I want to sell it to somebody that is a wine lover. So I can actually put my bottle on eBay, and then people can make sequential bids, right? And the one that is bidding the highest price is going to get the bottle. So in a forward auction, there's an upward pressure on the price. So you have one item, and many interested parties can place bids, and there's an upward pressure on the price. This is the other way around in a reverse auction. In a reverse auction, let's say I'm interested to buy some stationery material. So I'm interested to buy some papers, some pencils, some staplers, some scissors, and so on. So I configure my order. So I want like 10 pencils, 20 pens, 15 staplers, and whatever I want, right? So I configure my order, and then I can ask different companies to give me a quote. I can ask different companies how much they would charge me if I was to buy that order with them. That's a reverse auction. So in this particular setting, there's a downward pressure on the price. So I have one order, and different companies can actually give me a price for that one order. In a forward auction, there's always an upward pressure on the price. I have one bottle of wine, many people can make bids, the one with the highest bid wins the auction. In the reverse auction, I have one order, many companies can place their quotes, and there's a downward pressure on the price, and the one with the lowest price usually is going to win the auction. All of that can be facilitated thanks to the internet. Liquidation auction is a kind of auction whereby a company wants to liquidate some of its stock. Imagine that you're Dell and you still have plenty of old computers there and you want to get rid of them. You can do a liquidation auction. That means you just liquidate your stock and try to get rid of all the old computers that are still in your stock. A market efficiency auction is an auction whereby you're trying to get a market efficient price. Imagine that we have the example of the bottle of wine, and I can actually try and sell the bottle of wine to my friends, but my friends are not wine lovers, so they don't know how much it is worth. So in order to get a fair price for it, I'm going to do a market efficiency auction. I'm going to put it on an auction site, and hopefully I will get a fair price then. eBay uses the idea of proxy bidding. What is that, the idea of proxy bidding? So remember, eBay is a forward auction, so I have my bottle of wine and put it on eBay, and people can make sequential bids. So let's say I have my bottle of wine, put it right here, and somebody bids 100 euro for it, okay? So 100 euro, if there's only one person bidding, who's going to win the auction? Well, it will be that one person, of course, bidding 100 euro. Let's now say that a second person places a bid, 200 euros. So now I have two bids, 100 and 200 euros. Who's going to win the auction? Well, obviously, the guy bidding 200 euros will win the auction. But how much will he pay for the bottle of wine? Well, he will not pay 200 euros, but probably he'll pay 110, 120 euros. A bit higher than the 100 euros he will pay, right? So the bid you state at eBay is a maximum bid. It's a bid stating how far you're willing to go, but it's not necessarily the money that you're going to end up paying when you win the auction, right? So the guy who's bidding 200 euros will get the bottle for 110, 120 euros. And of course, part of that money will go to eBay for facilitating the auction. So again, if there would be a third guy now bidding 300 euros, then this guy, the second guy who bid 200 euros, will get a message from eBay saying that he has been outbid, so he's no longer part of the game. The one that is now winning the auction is the guy offering 300 euros, and he will get the bottle of wine then for 210 or 220 euros, so a bit higher than the previous bid. So this is the whole idea of proxy bidding. You state a maximum bid for an item, and the computer or the software will place new bids for you to keep you as long as possible in the winning bidding position until you're outbid, until somebody puts a higher bid than your maximum bid. And all of that can be efficiently automated by means of sniping. Sniping means bidding at the last moment. You don't want to bid too early, because if you're bidding too early, the only thing you're doing is you're pushing the price upwards. So it's really important to bid at the last moment. So you try to bid at the last moment because you want to minimize the chances of driving the price upwards during the auction. And there exist all kinds of sniping or software services that allow you to do this, to handle the actual transaction. So you can think about your bid just above what you think will be the highest proxy bid, and then you put your bid, you put it on a particular time, and the software is going to do it for you. So it's basically the idea of one shot to get it right. You can also bid for the same item then at multiple auctions and automatically retract other outstanding bids if you win one auction, for example. So all of that can be facilitated by means of software services. Of course, there's lots of opportunity for fraud and unfair practices as well in online auctions, and one of them is like puffing or shilling. Puffing or shilling is the idea where I have fake people or proxy participants. So imagine that I'm doing a forward auction, I have my bottle of wine here, and I have one of my friends as one of the bidders. And the only thing he should do is drive the price upwards. So he's gonna constantly put high bids in order to force the other ones to get the pay a higher price, such that I get a higher price for my bottle of wine. I can also do puffing or shilling in a reverse auction context. Imagine that I'm asking for a particular offer of stationery material, and I have different firms that can actually send their prices to me. I can also have a proxy participant, a good friend of mine, who's going to give a very low price for that one particular order just to actually force the other ones to even go lower. That's puffing or shilling. I can also set unrealistic target prices and say, hey, this is a bottle of wine. I only want to sell it in case I get a bid above 1,000 euros, so that could be a very unrealistic target price. Fake hidden identity of bidders, initiators is another example, very similar to puffing or shilling, of course. Non-acceptance of best bid. Imagine that my bottle of wine, that the best bid would be 100 euros, and I would not be happy with it. Then I could retract my the auction and retract my bottle of wine and say, hey, I'm not interested in selling it, which is also not a fair practice, of course. You can also have auction rings. Auction rings are or bid shielding are fraudulent agreements between different people in order to get a fair deal. So how does it work is as follows. I have my bottle of wine right here, and there are two bidders who set up a fraudulent agreement. So one of them bids for my bottle of wine 10 euros, which is not a lot, right? And the other one bids an extremely high amount, 1,000 euros, right? Now, those two are basically friends of one another, right? And they have an agreement. And the agreement is that the one that bids 1,000 euros, the only thing he's basically doing is he's scaring off other potential bidders. Because the bid is already 1,000 euros, other bidders will say, no, it's too high, I will not bid anymore. So I only have two bids now, 10 euros and 1,000 euros. A couple of seconds before the auction stops, the guy that has been bidding 1,000 euros retracts his or her bid, right? So the 1,000 euro bids is no longer valid, which means that there's only one bid remaining, which is the 10 euros. So this guy will get the bottle of wine at a ridiculously low price of 10 euros. This is bid shielding. You're shielding your bid. This guy with 10 euros kind of shielded his bid from the bid, using the bid of 1,000 euros. This is bid shielding, collusion, or an auction ring. It's also an unfair practice. It's also something that should obviously be monitored. There's plenty of academic research studying all these different types of auction models, by the way. In terms of B2C marketplaces, well, I'm sure you know them better than I do. We have Amazon, iTunes, Coolblue, Expedia, Booking.com. These are all marketplaces that bring sellers and buyers together around a specific theme. Theme is either books or games or videos or traveling, etc., or music, and offers all kinds of extra services on top of that. A transaction broker is then a market maker facilitating a particular type of transaction, right? For example, PayPal, which is now owned by eBay. PayPal is a service or a transaction broker facilitating the collection of electronic payments. So how does it work? You have a particular person, let's say Andy, logs on to PayPal, registers, by providing his name, address, and email. Then Andy is going to send $50 to Betty by entering his credit card information, her email address, and the amount. So he's entering credit card, Betty's email, and transaction amount. Andy's credit card will then be charged with $50, and a new account in Betty's name will be created and credited with $50. Betty will then receive an email notification. You've got cash. Click on the link, which will take her to her new PayPal account. Betty will then register by entering her name and address, and then she can actually choose. She can either withdraw her money and put it on her bank account, or she can also keep it on a personal PayPal account and use that to pay other online services or products. We also have lots of facilities to do mobile payments or maintain digital payments. Offline payment market is usually dominated by financial institutions such as Visa and MasterCard, but you have also lots of mobile payment technologies like Google Wallet. Google Wallet is an application, it's like an app that you can install on your smartphone where you can maintain different credit cards, and it just allows you to make payments electronically, right? Using near-field communication. Near-field communication is a technology very similar to Bluetooth, although it's not exactly the same, but you could just then make payments by keeping your iPhone close to a near-field communication device, and then it will allow you to do a payment like that. There's just other ways of mobile payment as well. You can see some of them listed here on my slide. There's also more and more shift to mobile commerce, m-commerce, whereby we're going to make use of mobile devices, smartphones to create business, mobile ticketing, whereby you have apps that allow you to purchase tickets on your smartphone, mobile banking and payments. There's location-aware advertising, whereby you can switch on location-aware advertising on your mobile phone, on your smartphone, and you will get targeted ads depending upon the location where you're at. Remember the example I gave earlier when you're shopping in the Distenstraat, and depending upon the location you're at, you will get targeted ads. There's mobile marketing, mobile shopping, and so on. So there's a tremendous amount of services being offered there. Another business model is, of course, the direct model, whereby we have a manufacturer which is directly going to sell goods and services to an end user. Typical example here is Dell, right? So you just go on the Dell website, you configure your laptop, and you will be able to directly sell to the end consumer. Subscription model is where you're actually subscribing to a particular service. Netflix, well, Netflix is a very important online DVD rental company. It's an American company where you can go online and you can rent movies and games. It's also coming to Belgium, for example, and in Netflix, you have to pay a subscription fee, and then there's a number of movies that you can rent or a number of games that you can rent, etc. Very similar to Spotify, which is then a music subscription model, Manpacks, which is for underwear and socks. Community model is social networks. Well, I'm sure you all know Facebook, Twitter, and LinkedIn. Crowdsourcing, we're going to see that in a moment. We have all kinds of online communities or customer review sites like Resto.be in Belgium, Yelp in the United States, TripAdvisor in case you want to plan trips or you want to get reviews from hotels, and so on. Crowdsourcing is going to rely on the idea of the wisdom of crowds, where you're going to try and achieve a particular aim by actually asking many people to contribute a small amount. That could be crowdsourced funding, whereby you're going to fund your projects by a multitude of people contributing a small amount in order to achieve a particular monetary goal. Could also be crowdsourced work. A very well-known example of this is Amazon Mechanical Turk. Amazon Mechanical Turk is an application whereby you can actually have, when you have lots of repetitive tasks that need to be done, you can actually outsource it to Amazon Mechanical Turk, and it's going to be done for you. We can have all kinds of utility models. We have Amazon EC2. Right? Amazon EC2 provides you with facilities for doing computations in the cloud. Right? So if in case you have a computation task, in case something needs to be computed, which is very resource intensive, you can give it to Amazon EC2 and it will actually do all the computations for you. Amazon Glacier is a storage or a backup platform situated in the cloud. So in case you have lots of files to be backed up, you can make use of Amazon Glacier platform. Google has similar services like the Google Cloud Platform, etc. Other examples of business models or content providers, which are going to provide you with digital content, like a news service that could be like CNN, whereby a customer is usually charged a periodic fee to subscribe to the service. And usually these content providers will also have some advertising facilities that can also provide additional revenue. A web portal is also a very important business model on the web. It's an initial point of entry to the web. Often started out as a search engine. Think about Yahoo, which is a search engine, but is also a portal website. Those portals are particularly attractive for advertisers when either you have volume of viewer traffic being very large or when it's very specialized. In Belgium, for example, we have a well-known portal, seniorennet.be, which is for elderly, typically retired people. Well, this is a portal which is often used by those people, so it's a very specialized audience because they're all retired or elderly people. So this can then be used for targeted advertising, for actually advertising targeted at retired older people. Okay, so this brings us to a next section on B2B technologies and business models, which we will discuss in a following session.